Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsey. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm great, Brian. We got some great racing this weekend, so let's get right to it.
Great racing around the country, Matt. The Pizza Man, Time in Motion, a bunch of good turf horses at Arlington Park. But today's show is all about the Stars and Stripes card at Belmont Park on Saturday. Matt, it's a terrific consecutive 5 graded stakes races. We got Kentucky Derby horses returning. We got some of the best sprinters in the nation. We got 2 super turf races for both genders of 3-year-olds. And we have the history-rich suburban handicap, older horses going 10 furlongs. Let's dig right in, Matt. We're going to start at the top, which I guess is race 6 at Belmont Park. It's the grade 3, $400,000 Dwyer. Matt, the field came up short, but it's top heavy with 2 stars of the division.
It sure is, Brian, and it looks like those 2 horses in Battalion Runner and Practical Joke are standouts in there.
Yeah, I know we have our top 3 that we'll pick for every race, folks, and we have different thirds. I think Matt and I are on the same 2 in the same order. 1, 2, we're talking about Battalion Runner, making his first start since a losing effort in the Wood Memorial, and Practical Joke, who's coming off a very good performance, went 5th in the Kentucky Derby. For me, my third, Matt, was Giuseppe the Great, who I thought ran a very good race in the Woody Stevens. Now he gets a mile, which is only a furlong farther. So I think Giuseppe the Great, as well as he ran in the Woody Stevens, rates at least a punter's chance in here.
Yeah, Brian, that sure does. And I'm going to give Tale of Silence another chance in the 3rd spot on my picks. He just didn't have any chance on Belmont Stakes Day against West Coast. Nobody did. So I'm going to give him another chance. But I like Battalion Runner. You like Battalion Runner on top in here. I like Battalion Runner. I think the 1-turn mile suits him better, just hits him in his sweet spot, as opposed to Practical Joke, who I think if the race was longer, I might lean to him a little bit more. I think this is the kind of situation where Pletcher's going to have this horse ready to roll off of a little bit of a layoff from back in the Wood Memorial. I like Practical Joke. I think he's very talented. His 5th place in the Kentucky Derby shows that, but I think this is just the right spot for Battalion Runner.
Yeah, so we mentioned Giuseppe the Great. We mentioned Tale of Silence. One horse I think that might be important to the outcome of the race, not necessarily as a threat, is True Timber. We're at a 1-turn mile, Matt, and Battalion Runner has been freshened up since the Wood Memorial, as Todd Pletcher likes to do. Remember, he was the favorite in that Wood Memorial, and the horses that he split, he finished a good 2nd. The winner was Irish Warcry, 2nd in the Belmont Stakes, and the 3rd horse was Cloud Computing, who came back from that race to win the Preakness. So, of course, that Wood Memorial form has looked very good. Now, Battalion Runner is the speed, so that's where True Timber comes in. Does True Timber really take it to Battalion Runner early and often? I think that's the way that Battalion Runner might get beaten here, but it really is his race to control. Practical Joke, Matt, I do find it a little ironic that you say, well, if it was longer, maybe he'd have a better chance. Remember, ever since last fall, I've been saying Practical Joke is going to be best at 1 turn. A 1-turn mile, I think, is absolutely perfect for Practical Joke. Unfortunately, in this small field of 5 horses with such a good speed horse in Battalion Runner, I think it's a tough task for Practical Joke. Both Matt and I see this basically as a 2-horse race. We both landed on Battalion Runner over Practical Joke. For me, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Practical Joke did rally to win this race. It should be an interesting race. Maybe not the best betting race of the bunch. In fact, it's the worst betting race of the 5. However, if you're starting, some of us are starting to pick 5. This is a good way to start it. We both like Battalion Runner best. Now, Matt, the next race is a much deeper race. We're talking about the grade 2, 7-furlong Belmont Sprint. And we literally, I am not exaggerating, say some of the best sprinters in the country are in this one.
Yes, Brian, they absolutely are. And like you said, it is a really interesting race because it is a 7 furlong sprint. In this case, it's going to be very interesting to see how the two likely speed horses in Unified and Green Grotto run the race. Are they really going to go out and knock heads all the way around the track? And if that's the case, that's going to make things a little tougher for Unified, a very, very, very talented horse, and is going to tilt things towards the closers. And in particular, in my opinion, that would go towards Mind Your Biscuits.
Again, it looks like, Matt, we are on the same winner in here. And how do you not like Mind Your Biscuits, what he's done of late, especially his last 5 or 6 races? One of the races that I'd like to look at for this horse is the 7 furlong Malibu, how he ended the year last year, running down a big performance by Sharp Azteca. Despite only having 1 win at the distance going in, Mind Your Biscuits, this would seem to be a perfect distance for him. 7 furlongs, he can unwind his sprinter rally that he has, his powerful sprinter rally. It is his first race since Dubai, Matt, so he's had a layoff, but he's working really well for Chad Summers. Mind Your Biscuits is going to be the favorite, and I detest picking the favorite, Matt. But in this one, I had no choice. I just think Mind Your Biscuits is that tough, that good. We both had Unified and Awesome Slew in the 2nd, 3rd positions. I gave Unified just a little bit more respect. I do think he has the ability to sit off a Green Grotto, a very good speed horse, by the way, early, and then make his move on the turn. And then I picked Awesome Slew for 3rd. We haven't even mentioned really, really nice horses like Tommy Macho, who I think could make some noise in here. Stall-walking Dude is just a tough old dude who often runs big races in these sprints. And Green Grotto, you know, he's often not respected, but he is a really, really tough speed horse.
Without question, Brian, these are all very, very good sprinters. Stall-walking Dude in the winter at Aqueduct is tough to deal with. He just seems to come up a little short when he has to step up into graded stakes company like here. So that's why I'm staying away from Stall-walking Dude. And with Green Grotto, like you said, Brian, the huge upset in the Carter. You can't let him get away too easily on the lead.
Yeah, Green Grotto ran a big Carter. I think Tommy Macho, especially if his odds drift pretty high up. Now, we both expect Mind Your Biscuits to be a pretty solid favorite in here off his recent form. That Dubai race was just sensational. But if Tommy Macho's odds drift up, I'll remind our audience, Matt, that he did have some trouble in the Carter. I think that's a race he could have won with a better trip where it was Green Grotto and Unified in there. So Tommy Macho as a live long shot. Awesome Slew, I think 7 furlongs is his distance. It's his best distance. He was a little bit wide and couldn't quite make up a lot of ground the Met Mile, but back at 7 furlongs, and if the pace is fast by Unified, pressuring Green Grotto early, Awesome Slew becomes a major threat. And you have him 2nd in here, Matt. Awesome sprint race.
Yeah, I'm going to give Awesome Slew another chance. I'm going to give him a good excuse in the Met Mile against More Spirit. You weren't making up ground against that horse in that race. So I'm going to give Awesome Slew a chance to show his best in the sprint.
Speaking of the sprint division, lots of good horses out there. Whitmore, Dre Fong, of course, will be making he's back in training at least. So we'll see Dre Fong later this summer. But I think an expected win by Mind Your Biscuits on Saturday in the Belmont Sprint moves him right to the top of the division. And interesting, the New York bred has gotten that good. Now, let's go to the turf. Let's shift from that 7 furlong, those one-turn races we were just talking about, to real distance races at 1.25 miles on the turf, the Oaks and the Derby. We're going to do the Oaks first. $1 million, grade 1. Should come as no surprise that it's attracted a really, really strong field from both America and from Europe. New Money Honey was one of the stars at the Breeders' Cup, and she probably will be favored in here, Matt, although both of us pick her for 2nd with one of the Euros, our top pick.
Yeah, Brian, I think they're calling this the Chad Brown Oaks. Is that correct, Brian? He's got 4 horses in this race,
And they're all good.
and they're all good. You know, Chad Brown, people are just sending him these talented turf horses. It's kind of like on the West Coast, everybody's sending their dirt horses to Baffert now with his recent addition of Mubtahij. But Chad Brown is loaded in here. We're both on the same horse. We're both on Sistercharlie here, who is coming over from France and is technically making her first start for Chad Brown in this race. We're going to have the replay up of Sistercharlie's last race, and she's in green silk with light green markings on there. And she just has a horrible, horrible bottled up trip, first on the rail, then in the middle of the track. Then they try and swing outside. Every time they try and make a move, it gets closed up in this grade $1 million race that was at Chantilly in France. So that was a very, very, very high caliber race. And when she finally got clear, she didn't look like she was going, but then she kicked it into gear and didn't lose by very much. And that kind of performance in that kind of race, there's no Lady Eli's in this race for the Americans here. There are some nice horses. So in this case, I've got to go Euro with Sistercharlie.
Yes, Matt, I'm with you. Sistercharlie, I think, proved in her last 3 starts, and especially the last one that you mentioned, the French Oaks. It's the biggest race for restricted to 3-year-old fillies in France, and she ran a huge race. She was 12-1 that day, coming off a nice graded stakes win, 2 wins in a row in France, and she was a very good, perhaps unlucky second. She could be the best 3-year-old filly in France, which says a lot. Of course, they're running on turf exclusively over there. So Sistercharlie is the real deal. I also like the fact that Johnny Velasquez is getting honor for Chad Brown. And I also like the fact that Sistercharlie has run the distance. She's been running a distance of ground of late. The French Oaks is a little bit more than 1.25 miles. So this 1.25 mile race on Saturday will be a little bit unusual for the American fillies this early in their career, but not for Sistercharlie. And for that reason and her class, I think she is the horse to beat. One of many from Chad Brown, as you mentioned. We both have new money. Honey, the daughter of Medagliadoro, really has done nothing wrong. She won the Breeders' Cup. Her first race out this year was just a little bit dull, but then she showed how good she was in her last race at Belmont Park, winning nicely, controlling the pace. She'll try to be up there early again, and certainly I think the top American threat also from Chad Brown. So it's an interesting race between the top 2. And I think unlike the Colts, Matt, Sistercharlie is one of the best 3-year-olds in Europe. I mentioned she might be the best 3-year-old in France. I think a lot of times these races, we see some grade 2 types come over and do well in these distance races on the turf here at Belmont, just a little bit later in the summer at Arlington Park. And I think we see that in the Belmont Derby just a little bit, where they're not really the best 3-year-olds of Europe coming over for that one. But Sistercharlie is that good. She's the one to beat. Matt, we both have Kenny McPeak as the one that might break up the Chad Brown party, at least for the trifecta. Daddy's Little Darling, of course, went over to Europe, was going to run in the Epsom Oaks, and broke off, dumped her rider there before the race and was unable to run. But Kenny McPeak has had this nice rallying American filly pointed for turf since the Kentucky Oaks. He brought her back here. She's working well, and she really closes every time. So we both expect her to run a good race as well.
Yeah, Brian, her second place in the Oaks was impressive. Hey, she's by Scat Daddy, and we saw at Royal Ascot that those Scat Daddies are pretty darn good on the grass.
Scat Daddy is certainly missed, of course, the late Scat Daddy. But yeah, the amount of good turf horses he sired before his death is almost staggering. And Daddy's Little Darling looks like the Chad Brown Oaks, but Daddy's Little Darling we both think is the horse that could upset it. I do want to mention 55 because I think she's an absolutely wonderful turf filly, also a Chad Brown filly. I just think 1.25 miles might be a little bit out of her comfort range. but it wouldn't be a surprise to see 55 run another very good race in the Belmont Oaks. All right, Matt, we're going to shift back to the dirt. Also a mile and a quarter, though, and that's the Suburban. On paper, this looks like a one-horse race. Shaman Ghost has just run huge races this year, second to Arrogate in the Pegasus World Cup, and then he won the Big Cap, the Santa Anita Handicap in the spring, and most recently he got by a dogged competitor in Dolphus in the Pimlico Special.
Yeah, Brian, and handicapping this race, I'm landing on Shaman Ghost on top. I, like you, I don't like to pick favorites, but you keep going through these fields, and to me, Shaman Ghost is just way too much better than the rest of the field. I understand Matt King Cole is a good horse. I understand that he is likely to be loose on the lead, but I do have concerns about the distance, regardless of whether he is pressed on the lead or not, especially when you have a horse like Shaman Ghost that is going to be coming at the end of this 10 furlongs. And we know that that is not going to be any problem for him. So Matt King Cole may be out there on the lead, but I think he's going to be hard-pressed to hold off Shaman Ghost at the end.
All right, Matt. So we're dealing with a horse that's probably about 3 to 5 when the race goes off. Shaman Ghost in this 6-horse field in the Suburban. Suburban, by the way, has a wonderful history. This is a race that Dr. Fager in Damascus went at it. Oh, Matt, about 50 years ago. I think 50 years ago is right on, actually. Matt, Shaman Ghost, it's funny. And by the way, you mentioned you don't like to pick favorites. This is the first I knew of this. I thought you did like to pick favorites, but hey, I can give you a little ribbing now and then. Shaman Ghost, we've kind of come full circle a little bit on Shaman Ghost. Earlier in the year, I was more on the Shaman Ghost bandwagon than you were before the Pegasus World Cup, especially. I remember our discussion about Shaman Ghost. I still feel where I did at the beginning of the year. He's a very nice horse. He likes the distance, but by no means do I think he's a superstar. 2 starts back in the same handicap, he beat Midnight Storm, and I think it's been proven since that Midnight Storm is a very beatable horse, especially on dirt, especially at a mile and a quarter. And then last time he was all out to go by Dolphus, that was Dolphus's best race yet. I think Matt King Cole is a better, more talented horse than Dolphus. I've been waiting for the right spot for Matt King Cole to win a big race, and I think we've found it here, sir. Matt King Cole is the only speed in this race, I think, is an understatement. Matt King Cole is out there all alone. I see him setting easy fractions under Irad Ortiz, and then it doesn't become a mile and a quarter race, Matt. It becomes about a 6 furlong sprint to the wire, and with Matt King Cole, the advantage of leading the race and also getting a little bit away from Shaman Ghost, I really love his chances in here. Matt, I like Matt King Cole to upset Shaman Ghost. There's no doubt in my mind that he can win this. And when we're talking 3 to 5 versus 5 or 6 to 1, I love that bet. Matt King Cole is a talented horse. Other good horses in here. Keen Ice gets up for a share. A mile and a quarter is probably right up his alley. We both like the Jersey-bred Sunny Ridge to some extent. Follow Me Krebs run a lot of good races recently in California. There are other interesting horses, but it seems like with me and you, it's the favorite versus the speed. You're on the favorite. I'm on the speed. Shaman Ghost, Matt King Cole. Let's see what happens.
Absolutely.
All right, Matt. So we go from the Suburban, which is actually the 9th race of the day. We're going to the 10th, the final, the 5th of these graded stakes, consecutive graded stakes on Stars and Stripes Day at Belmont Park. And it might be the deepest field of all. It's the Belmont Derby, $1.2 million, the grade 1 race. And I like to see this. We've been a little bit similar in our picks in the first 4, but in the Derby, we are very different. I want you to tell me who you like best, Matt, in this wide open Belmont Derby.
And I think without question, Brian, this is the most wide open of the 5 stakes races. Again, there's so many horses in here that have a shot to win it. And again, without a big standout American in here, I'm going to lean to the Euros, and my top pick is going to be Called to the Bar, who most recently won a grade 3 in France and the 3 horses that ran behind Called to the Bar all came back and ran big in their next start. And in handicapping this race and in doing some research in it for this race, I learned some things that I didn't know. And one of them has to do with the fact that Called to Bar is a gelding, and that over in France, geldings are restricted from a lot of the big races over there. Was something that I didn't know. And so coming over here and running in this Belmont Derby is a big opportunity in a big race. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Called to the Bar ends up staying over here and running in the States where there'll be so many more opportunities for the horse. So I like Called to the Bar on top, but other horses that I like Arklow, whose last 2 races on the turf have been very good. His trainer, Brad Cox, is winning at a 35% rate at Belmont Park now. I also like Ticonderoga to bounce back with getting Javier back on top. He had a really tough trip last time out in the Pennine Ridge. And this is me, Brian, talking. There are horses from Aidan O'Brien in there. And, how can you ever discount Aidan O'Brien in these races? He's got a Houseman in there, Homesman in there, very talented race. And then there's Yoshida for Bill Mott.
Yes, Matt. Actually, Yoshida is my top pick in here. Now, remember, I said Sistercharlie, I thought was the standout of the 3-year-olds coming from Europe, the filly Sistercharlie going in the Oaks. I'm not as confident as the form in the Europeans. I do recognize that Called to the Bar is a nice French horse and certainly has a chance to win this. I think a lot of horses, like we've kind of said here, have a chance to win this race. And Called to the Bar by no means is a bad pick. You probably get a little bit of decent odds on him. You mentioned Arklow, who's 2 turf races. He's only run twice on turf. We're both terrific. We saw him win on Derby Day. Arklow is a threat, and I think as a son of Arch, there's reason to hope that 1.25 miles will be fine for him. Ticonderoga, son of Tappet, yeah, he's run into some trouble. I don't know if he's quite as good as the very best, but Ticonderoga, your 3rd pick, is certainly threatened here. But Yoshida, Matt, the Japanese bred, the grandson of Sunday's Silence, I think could be the next big American grass thing. That's how impressive he's been. He made 1 start as a 2-year-old. He was green. He had some trouble. He ran a very good second last fall at Aqueduct. But this year, his 2 races have just been gigantic, just really impressive. You can't understand how impressive he looked just by looking on paper. Yoshida won a maiden race at Keeneland, and then the James Murphy, which was only a mile Preakness Day at Pimlico. But Yoshida just came from the clouds that day after being on the pace at Keeneland and just looked like the real deal. He's bred to run a distance. He's bred to run on turf. I think he's in the very good hands with Bill Mott. I think the talent of Yoshida is as much talent I've seen from a young American turf horse in years. I am afraid that he might end up the favorite in here, but with so many horses to bet, I don't think anybody's going to be low. So I am on Yoshida. Of the Europeans, I do like Homesman. Homesman is a first-time Lasix horse for Aidan O'Brien. I think Aidan O'Brien's other horse in here might be more of a pace setter, White Cliffs of Dover. So I think Homesman is prepared to run a big race for Aidan O'Brien. I've got him in the 2nd spot. Arklow, as I mentioned, I think this race makes a lot of sense for Arklow, and it's hard to know how good Arklow might be yet for Brad Cox. So very interesting there. We haven't even mentioned really good horses, Matt. Good Samaritan, Oscar Performance. I think Big Score as a long shot might rally up into the picture as well.
Certainly, Brian. This is whatever way you're playing. If you're playing in the pick 4s and the pick 5, this has got to be a race where you're using a bunch of horses. I like Yoshida too, Brian, but it is a step up in class, and like you said, Brian, I am afraid that he is going to take a great deal of action in this race. No, he's not going to be 6-5 or anything like that, but he could be 5-2 when all of the betting is finished in here. And interestingly, for what it's worth, Rosario is not riding Yoshida in here. He's going to ride Good Samaritan in the race. Both of them are trained by Mott. That may mean nothing, but interesting tidbit to throw in.
Yeah, very good race. Great way to end the Stars and Stripes card. Going over it again, folks, in the Dwyer, we both picked Battalion Runner to beat Practical Jokes, the two heavy favorites in the Dwyer. In the sprint, we both like Mind Your Biscuits over combinations of Awesome Slew and Unified. In the Oaks, Matt and I are both on Sistercharlie coming from France to defeat the probable favorite, New Money Honey and Daddy's Little Darling. And in the Suburban, I'm picking the upset, Matt King Cole. Matt's on the favorite Shaman Ghost in a 1.25 mile meeting there on the dirt. And in the Belmont, we're very different. My top pick is Yoshida over Homesman. Matt likes Call to the Bar over Arklow. It is a fantastic card of racing, Matt. Closing shots from you, sir.
Yeah, let's see how we do on these 5 races, Brian. I think the HorseCenter guys did pretty well on the last show. And Brian, you had a big price in there from the United Nations. So enjoy the weekend of racing, folks. And as always, I want to thank our producer, Brett Workman.
Brett Workman, who's at home right now with his daughter, Alexis, who just had tonsil surgery 2 days ago. So a shout out to both of them. Thanks for the help today, Brett. And thank you, folks, for watching HorseCenter once again. Matt's headed to England next week for some racing over there. So we might see in a little over a week for HorseCenter. But yeah, we did well last week with our previews of races like the Queen's Plate and the United Nations and the Mother Goose. Hopefully our picks in the Dwyer, the Belmont Sprint, the Belmont Oaks, the Suburban, and the Belmont Derby are every bit as good. We hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next week on HorseCenter.